We have breaking news. The Associated Press is now confirming that Vice President Kamala Harris has made her pick for a running mate. And it is a bit of a surprise. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is her selection. He is the 60-year-old governor of Minnesota, has been since 2019. Before that, he served 5 terms in Congress. He also had a full life before turning to politics, working as a high school teacher and a football coach. He has the backing of some prominent progressives, including Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Let's get to political director Andrew Rafferty. What do you make of this pick, Andrew?
Yeah, well, good morning, guys. And you're right. Tim Walz was probably the least known of those finalists that we've been talking about for the past couple weeks. Not a lot of names that are hugely known nationally, but governors of battleground and swing states like Josh Shapiro, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, places where Democrats would either need to or like to win to be successful in November. Tim Walz is somebody who doesn't bring that sort of battleground state knowledge and reputation to the ticket, but what we saw throughout the process is that he was somebody who was universally liked among the Democratic parties. 60 years old, a former member of the House of Representatives, a lot of really strong relationships with Democratic lawmakers here in Washington, D.C., and somebody who made himself pretty well known over the past few weeks through his cable news appearances. He was the one who kind of coined that Republicans and J.D. Vance are, quote, weird, and that got a lot of attention. And what was becoming more and more clear throughout this process is that there were some real drawbacks and hesitations about the other person we believe was the top frontrunner, that's Josh Shapiro. There were questions about his past comments about Palestine and his views on the Palestinian protests happening at college campuses throughout the country. We know that the progressive base of the Democratic Party had huge problems with Shapiro, whereas Walz, while he doesn't necessarily give you any tangible political benefits, again, has a personal relationship with Harris, somebody that if something were to happen to Harris, if she is elected, as you could see stepping in, has the experience, military background, also a school teacher, has this sort of swagger about him that maybe can appeal to part of the country that we know is going to be vitally important to deciding who will win the election, guys.
And I wonder what you think the pick tells us about VP Harris's mindset on governing. Because let's be honest, the raw political choice was Shapiro. He's popular in Pennsylvania. You got to win Pennsylvania. That math seems easy. And he's more of the swaggy of the two. Walz is seen as folksy, relatable, likable,
the guy
warm.
who ate the barbecue.
Right, former high school teacher. There's just something about him that came across as very everyman, even though he's now the vice presidential candidate, reportedly. What does that say to you about her approach either to the campaign or to what she wants out of a governing partner?
Hey, well, look, we talk about this so often through the political lens, who could potentially help or hurt a ticket. But I do think that a lot of decision-making behind the scenes goes into the governing aspect of this and the personal relationships. We know that North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, who was early on in the process, believed to be in contention, who took himself out of it, was somebody who had a relationship with Kamala Harris. It's very possible that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz just had a really good conversation over the weekend when we know the two of them met, and she left that conversation feeling like he was somebody who would give her the most comfort being in the Oval Office, not only being somebody who could step up and be president, but being a partner for the 4 years or potentially 8 years that a Harris administration would last. So there's a lot of personal dynamics too that go into this, along with, you know, the raw political sort of pros and cons. And there's no doubt that we'll find out a little bit more about what some of the behind the scenes thinking was that went into this reported decision this morning.
How much of this do you believe was about getting Midwestern voters and rural voters as well in that demographic?
Yeah, well, look. Yeah, I mean, Minnesota is not necessarily a swing state. We know Republicans have said that they had their eyes on it. Joe Biden won it by about 6 points 4 years ago. But a lot of those sensibilities, Alex, that you just talked about, the guy that you could see at the barbecue, the guy who was literally a football coach. He coached high school football for a number of years. Those translate beyond Minnesota to Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, in the same way that Republicans hope that J.D. Vance, having his Ohio roots, translates to those same them states. So when we talk about the most critically important places that will decide the election in November, it's those Great Lakes states. It's those Midwestern states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And now we see 2 tickets where their additions in the vice president are people who no doubt the candidates hope can appeal to those types of voters, even though they're not necessarily from a specific state that we just mentioned.
And also the idea of the folksy aspect of all this, high school football coach at the barbecue guy, kind of helps round out California, liberal, prosecutor. It's a little bit of a foil in the political sense of that word that helps maybe round out her appeal and image.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And I think that was something we've already seen, this sort of branding, if you will, of Kamala Harris, Republicans trying to really set the tone that she is this out-of-touch, dangerous liberal. And Walz, of course, has his own progressive agenda in Minnesota, but he's spent years in the more moderate lane of the party, even at one time having good standing with the National Rifle Association. There are some real things in his background that I think he can point to sort of be a balance. And we know that when these candidates are picking their running mate, balance is important. Somebody who brings qualities that the top of the ticket doesn't have. For J.D. Vance, it was age. For Walz, I think you're exactly right, that it's this kind of more moderate history that Harris can, not directly, but a lot of her allies can more subtly point to and say, hey, this is a guy who comes from a very different background and really showcases that Harris is somebody who's going to listen to all opinions when it comes to how her philosophy around governing.
And he's really good behind the podium, great orator, the folksy demeanor, and you said it, Andrew, he kind of gave birth to the whole Trump and Vance are weird, and that has caught on. It's caught fire in Democratic circles.
So
yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I was going to ask, when it comes to J.D. Vance, then how do they compare? Because we are obviously paying a lot of attention this election cycle to the VP picks. So how do the two compare?
Yeah, I think one of the things that have taken Republicans kind of by surprise, specifically the Trump campaign, is how some of these past comments, which for J.D. Vance, which have been out there, have really negative impacted his rollout. And the Vance campaign and the Trump campaign certainly knew about these things, but it's really about how it is kind of fits into the political dynamics and conversation. So we're going to learn a lot more about Tim Walz than we do know right now. A lot Republicans, I'm sure, are going to be digging into his past writings. He has a pretty prolific history, both as governor and before that in the House of Representatives. So there's a lot of sort of tape on the governor, but how just knowing what he has said in his own history versus how it can be used politically is always a little bit of a fraught exercise, because just because someone said something in the past, being able to gauge how that plays in some of these key states we've been talking about is one of the things that is kind of the X factor, the unknown, and that's going to be one of the most interesting things to watch over the course of this week as the two hit the road in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and beyond.
It was also fascinating here, Andrew, as you know, that we are in this unconventional election season. For you to have about 2 weeks to pick a running mate is unprecedented. And you have to wonder, too, there's incredible vetting that goes into this process. Everything you've ever written, ever said, every plane ticket, every bowling score, they want to know everything about your life. And so to have that condensed under Eric Holder, former Attorney General's law firm, who headed up that process, you do have to wonder, and we'll see, was it enough time? Were anything overlooked or missed? Because this is so much faster than this stuff is normally done. Usually it's months and months, not days and days.
Yeah, and some news, Serena Marshall has confirmed the AP's reporting that it will be Tim Walz. So we now have that on our own on Scripps News. And Rob, you're absolutely right. I think looking at Kamala Harris's career, those who have been close to her say she's a very diligent person. She likes to hear all the opinions in the room. She is not somebody who's initially decisive. She likes to take her time and marinate it. And I think we saw that play out in the fact that, hey, we were looking at maybe a social media post last night. Once that DNC virtual roll call ultimately concluded, we went into last night with the reporting that she still hadn't made a decision. And so the fact that she waited until, I mean, to get from Minnesota to Philadelphia, not the longest plane ride in the world, but still, you got to get things moving. And what we saw this morning from the cameras outside his home is this kind of influx of SUVs. Even though he does have his own security detail as governor, the number of black cars outside his home this morning was notable. And so she did essentially was a little bit more under the gun when you consider how much time Donald Trump had to vet his potential running mates. And we still saw some of the information that came out about J.D. Vance, even though he had months and months to do it. Kamala Harris and her team, as you mentioned, Eric Holder, leading the vetting process, had just about 2 weeks. And yes, you can kind of do a pretty deep dive in that time, but there's also the personal dynamics of making sure that you have somebody who's going to be with you for 4 years and be an ally and not sort of be looking towards their next potential political opportunity.
The Washington Post puts it succinctly like this. In picking Walz, she has selected a seasoned politician with executive governing experience and signaled the importance of Midwestern battleground states such as Wisconsin and Michigan. Kind of it in a nutshell right there.
Yep.